Welcome to another episode of The Real Dirt with Chip Baker. On today's Dirt, I have Joe Ori. He's founder of a cultivation facility in Michigan, 6 Labs. Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Hi, Chip. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, you're currently speaking to me in my new podcast studio. We're under construction. So listeners, forgive the poor sound quality. We're fixing to turn this back into a awesome state-of-the-art podcast facility to bring all of great people like Joe and others to you. If you haven't listened to any other Real Dirts, if this is your first one, please go to iTunes and Spotify and subscribe. The Real Dirt Podcast. Man, I was really excited when you contacted us about chatting because, you know, you're an entrepreneur. My favorite subject is business, no matter if we're talking sugarcane or pecans or ganja, my favorite subject. You're in one of the hottest states right now, Michigan. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on in Michigan?
Sure. Well, I don't know, Chip, how much background, you or your audience knows about it, but, when we say that, we tell our investors that, Michigan is a new market, they all kind of do their own research and say, well, it's not really new. They did have a medical program, back in 2008, 2009, that was wrought with problems. It basically became a legalized black market, if you will. And so back around 2016, 2017, the state, looked at what they had and said, we've got to revamp this thing. And they rewrote the laws and modernized them, if you will. I mean, it's kind of crazy to call anything in the cannabis world modernizing because it's all relatively new. But they rewrote the laws and opened it up to real businesses coming in. And so, when you said I'm the founder, I'm a co-founder. I have 5 partners, and we saw an incredible opportunity to come in and have a substantial footprint in the state of Michigan. So it's a relatively new market when you look at it in perspective. I mean, we have a substantial lack of supply of pretty much every product. Very recently, the caregivers who were effectively the market back in 2008, 2009, and up until 2016, 2017, were recently, taken offline relative to certain products and their ability to sell to dispensaries. So now there is an incredible lack of supply, and the prices are extremely, extremely high at the cultivation level, and they're anticipated to be that way for a while. And obviously the coronavirus didn't help some of the newly minted companies, meaning ones that came online before us or were planning to come online, because construction stopped and everybody's kind of halted. So Michigan's going to have a pretty solid market for a few years. And then we'll see what happens. We're trying to, force the state to avoid the problems that Oregon ran into and Colorado with an oversupply of growers. And I think I know a little bit about you. I think you guys are in Oklahoma, and I'm very well aware of what you guys got going on there. I have a very good friend of mine who's just started a company in Oklahoma, and you guys got thousands and thousands, whatever, 7,000 licensed growers, and all different sizes. I know that, but that's kind of the thing. Every state's different. You don't know what you're getting. It's like it's like a box of chocolates.
Oh yeah, Michigan's hot for a bunch of reasons. One, it has a historic cannabis presence. Historically, people have grown and consumed vast amounts of cannabis in Michigan. Right.
Yeah.
There's growers and, there's growers and underground networks. And in states like that, they blossom a little bit differently than states that don't have a cultural connection to, cannabis. Ann Arbor and Detroit were huge hub spots for cannabis and, hashish for 50 years.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's no shortage of people who are using and have been using for years and are, fans of the product. Obviously, strangely enough, there's quite a few municipalities that still haven't opted in. I mean, when you look at the map of Michigan and you start to pinpoint where you might open some retail stores, you're really kind of limited in the sense that I think last check, and don't quote me, but I'm pretty close, I'm sure. I think there's only about 138 municipalities that have opted in to actually have retail stores. So,
is that cities or counties?
Those would be cities, municipalities. And the crazy thing is Detroit itself, Detroit proper, still hasn't opted in for recreational cannabis. So you're talking about a monstrous opportunity once that does happen. And, people are trying to forecast where it's going to be the next place that's going to open. And, there's a lot of lobbying efforts being, going on. But when you get up in northern Michigan, yes, I do agree with you that there's an incredible base of people that are fans and supportive of the plant, hopefully going to force the rest of the hand of the state to jump online. But it hasn't been as easy as you might think.
Oh, no, weed's not easy, man. It's hard. It is absolutely hard. And where it used to be maybe a little easier, the commercialization of it is definitely difficult.
It's the craziest part of this business. I mean, we came in and we said, okay, we're what we call early late adapters, right? We didn't come in 2008. We don't have a company that started in Colorado or California, but we said, let's identify, what's wrong with the industry. Let's identify problems. Let's solve problems. So once we came together and the group came together rather organically, we had, we didn't pick and parcel. We just were a group of guys who knew each other through friendship or business. And we ended up having, an attorney, myself, we had an accountant, we had a financier, we had, a restaurateur who's, master of logistics. And we actually had a builder who oversaw the entire project. And those were the partners that came together. And we had, a younger partner who, is really, really, passionate and embedded in the cannabis world. So those 6 partners, hence the name 6 Labs, we came together. And some people don't understand the product. Some people, are really talented in business. And then other people are passionate and know the product, but don't know, how to sell it. So, you have we're basically gelling those processes together to make what I believe to be, the next generation cannabis company, because everything that we do from the minute that we started our project has been geared towards solving problems. So we researched and we traveled throughout the country before we even met with a designer for our facility. And we said, okay, we like these things. These things seem to work. Is there anything better in the industry right now? Then we found all these other things that don't work, and we went out and tried to solve those. So when we created our facility, we got some people in the state who were looking at us saying, you guys are never going to make it. You spent too much money. We could have built our facility for probably $6 million, and we would have had a great facility. We went out organically, raised money with former business associates, friends, family, and, we built a $10 million plus facility that we basically said this, Chip: if the federal government gets involved in this in the next few years and the FDA starts to place regulations, we said this: we don't know what those regulations are going to be. Okay. We don't, but we said this: if we're not passing after those regulations, then no one else is. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing we could do to say that we were going to definitely make this next step whenever that comes. But yes, right now, there are a multitude of problems. I mean, you can talk about, the ones that we have focused on, which is, confusion and intimidation in the market, product quality, lack of consistency, perception, the fact that there's no brands, there's no national brands. And then, what you have now is some of these companies that are in other states, because they can't get licensed and it's too much money to do it, they're just buying labels in other states, but it doesn't mean that that's cannabis. So, one of the other things we wanted to do is be transparent. We want, you don't necessarily know where you're getting your cannabis from, especially if it's got some label on it from a company in California. And, now they're saying, well, we're growing the same cannabis here. And we wanted to basically give our consumers a seed to sale transparency where they know everything about it, as much information as you possibly can give them, and educate them so that, they can make the best decisions, for their medical or their recreational needs. So, but, it's an evolving market. It's super exciting. That's the best part about it, is that, it's so young and no one really knows where it's going, that, you really, there's no right or wrong answer. Yeah.
It's all just started. Yeah. Joe, interesting, listening to your story, I realize you're a hybrid cannabis entrepreneur. Almost all the cannabis entrepreneurs fall in 3 different kind of areas. They're the growers or weed dealers that have been doing this forever. And so it's natural progression, mm-hmm. right? They're the investors, whether it's family office, venture capitalists, that get approached by a grower, i.e. one of these growers or drug dealers to fund their operation. And then there is the like brother-in-law and family friend that get together while they're smoking a joint on the back porch and say, "Oh man, I think we can do this. We could throw our money together." And the reason you're a hybrid is because most of the like brother-in-law investment type packages start off real small. And they don't have this bigger picture, you know, solving problems, this experience in business. It's often their first business. They may be successful as dentists or attorneys or real estate or something other, but haven't had a vast entrepreneurial industry. And you're a hybrid of the VC investment plan, but the brother-in-law family investor type of investment package.
I think that's probably a fair assessment, you know, and I have my own personal journey, you know, with cannabis. I mean, I played sports my whole life and, you know, and I knew early on that I wasn't going to go to college unless, you know, somebody gave me money to go. So I worked really hard in school and played football. And I went to college and, you know, injured myself very severely my freshman year and had my very first back surgery when I was 18 years old. And this I'm aging myself, Chip, you know, this is back in 1988, and, you know, I had my first back surgery. I got surgery, and I felt great afterward, went right back to playing football. And I ended up re-injuring myself the following year, and then the year after that having a second surgery. And now this is 1990. I'm in New York City in college. I go into Columbia University, and I'm in chronic pain. So what are these doctors doing? Well, this is the beginning of the opiate period, right?
No, you need the chronic. You need the chronic.
Right. So they're feeding me opiates like they're going out of style, and I'm really not feeling well. So I personally just stopped taking them, but I'm in chronic pain. And, you know, as I hate to say this about the Ivy League, but, you know, cannabis was available to me back in the 90s. And I started, experimenting with it and noticing that I was getting certain levels of pain relief that I said, you know, this is better than anything I've taken. And alcohol, you know, only made your symptoms worse the next day because you were dehydrated and you felt like shit. So I had my personal journey. And then as I grew, I've looked at the NFL, I've looked at these sports leagues. I've got tons of friends who are former NFL players, and I have friends who work for the NFL, and I battled them all the time. I said, how could you guys be, especially after everything got exposed, how could you guys be suspending these players for testing positive for cannabis, but yet the back room in the athletic room, you guys are pounding opioids down these guys' throats. They're all ruining their careers. Their lives are going under, and yet the hypocrisy continues. So I had a personal pursuit when cannabis went medically viable. I said, you know, this is I want to get into this. I want to change the way the world perceives this, because it's not what, you know, I'm 50. I was raised by immigrant parents. They told me everything was dope, right? Everything was bad.
Right.
And so you grow up and you're like, you know, so you grow up in this mentality where everybody who smokes cannabis or, you know, does anything, you're all put in together. Heroin users and cannabis users in my family were blocked the same, right?
Yeah.
So I had a personal pursuit about this, and, you know, so it's not just, you know, smoking a joint in the back room, but we did definitely look at it and say, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And the only way to do it right at this stage in the game, how do we become different, is to solve problems that are out there. So that's what we're pursuing.
I'm real interested in that, because that's, you know, one of my business philosophies is answer questions, solve problems. How did you identify the initial problem, and what were some of the first ones that you realized that you want to share with us?
In doing our R&D, we did exhaustive R&D. Everyone in the company was given a specific, you know, task to figure out. And, you know, that went from the actual cannabis products that were out there, and, you know, from labeling and how many were out there, what the users were feeling, how the medical patients were responding to certain, you know, going to a dispensary, what their experiences were, all the way to the facility and what kind of equipment you were using and what kind of, logistics you had in place. So we said, we came up with, a list, and the list started with like I said, the product, confusion and intimidation. I mean, so many products out there, and you're relying on a bud tender, right? And some of these bud tenders are awesome, and I've experienced them.
But most are just Burger King weight. So.
Correct. I mean, and so when you look at it like this, you're saying, okay, most of the states are medical, right, Chip? And then, some, 11 or 12 are online as rec. But back then it was all medical. So you're saying to yourself, okay, so not only are you not getting a doctor script, but you're actually going to the pharmacy and you're not getting a pharmacist tell you what you should take. You're getting a bud tender. So we saw that that's a problem inherent in the industry, and we're aiming to solve that problem. We can't require a curriculum for a bud tender just yet. But what we're going to do is we're going to put everything on our label. We're going to let everybody know what goes into it. We're going to try as best we can with the limited research and science that we have available to us to pinpoint what, these particular products are expected to do for you. We're going to try to control the dosage and give a control, product quality control, which leads into that issue. I mean, when you look at these states, Chip, and you see how different so many of the testing regulations are. Oh yeah, man. And you look at it. Come on, I mean, and you're looking at it, and you're saying, okay, these are mostly put in by lobbyists, and cannabis, these acceptable levels of toxicity should not be being decided by lobbyists. They should be being decided by science. Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, in Oklahoma, the pesticide levels just changed. The acceptable levels, increased, went from 0.5 to 0.25. So that's a perfect example. So it's been 0.5 for all that time. Now it's 0.25. And, what level is acceptable? And then you start to think this crazy thing, which is, especially for people who've been using cannabis for a long time, well before legalization, is, you look and you see how challenging it is to get your cannabis in a controlled environment with experts and all the greatest equipment money can buy to be as clean as it possibly can. And you still see levels of infiltrates that you're just like, how in the hell did this happen, right? Well, think about what's in the black market products, and when you start to think about what's in the products where people really have no concern or care, there's no testing, you start to say to yourself, what have I been ingesting for all these years? What is the cannabis user who still goes down the street to buy illegal cannabis, or God forbid, buy an illegal vape cartridge? What are they getting? So we're trying to get the message
totally
out
unregulated.
there.
Totally unregulated, man.
Yeah.
People use Raid for spider mites, and also the worst contaminants, mold, mildew, smoke, diesel fuel.
Jesus, I never heard that one, Chip. I got to be honest with you. That's frightening.
But I've heard all kinds of stories, man.
Yeah. So and they're real. So. And then, obviously you got lack of consistency. You want to go into the store, and if you have, and you are lucky enough to be in a state that has legalization, and you have a consistent provider through, from seed to sale that you trust, you could go in there one day though, and, when you start getting into edibles and you start getting into the levels of THC and what's actually, you're being provided, you want to know and rely on it. And in the sense of saying, if I go to the pharmacy and I get Tylenol, I know what I expect from Tylenol. It's going to give me the same reaction every single time. Well, we need to get to that place. There needs to be that kind of consistency. So, we think that with, all of these variables that are in place, we're trying to do our own in-house, R&D and trying to test and research what other entities and what other countries, for that matter, have done. And, we're looking at it this way, Chip. I don't know what your feeling is about this, and I'd be interested to hear it because I know you're in the business. I know you're a really bright guy. It's like the United States is allowing all these other markets in other countries to take off. And, it's great that they've allowed the states to do this and bypass federal regulation. But really what we've allowed to happen is we've allowed other countries to get behind the science first, and they're way further along in getting to products that will actually be consistent and solve many of these issues that I brought to the table today. And I think that we are losing out And, I don't know what the trade agreements are going to be once this all becomes legalized, and whether they're going to open up the floodgates to California and whatever they got going down in Mexico and other countries. But there's going to be drastic competition. I mean, if you don't agree with this, I think cannabis is eventually going to be an ingredient rather than a product. I think it's going to be.
It's already started. Hemp industry already started that one for sure. It's an interesting question, man. Interesting. One of the many things that makes America great is pretty much anybody can come here and in a brief period of time, overnight in some states and cities, and sometimes a week or 10 days or maybe 30 days, you can set up any business in the United States, no matter if you live here, if you're a resident here, if you own property here. All you have to do is have a passport and some corporate documents, and anybody can open up a business here. So, places like former Soviet Union, Russia, Israel, Amsterdam, England, all of these places have had these university-sponsored researches for a long time.
I know.
GW Pharmaceuticals, they've been working out of Great Britain for 25, 30 years now. And the stuff coming out of Israel and technology and gene development, and
it's incredible.
It's just incredible. And all those people are just going to come to the U.S. and do business. And that's what's happened with GW Pharmaceuticals, is they've just opened up patents in the U.S., or attempted to. So, we're absolutely behind on the research and the opportunity for a lot of American people. But the other opportunity is just, this influx of new technology and ideas and coming from the international, research place or marketplace.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's something that nobody talks about enough, and I'm glad you touched on it, because not only is the United States passing up on the opportunity, for this commodity, but they're actually ignoring, the potential massive manufacturing opportunity that this product presents, and the type of quality engineering that the United States could provide if, in fact, this was, accepted nationally, and we were able to look at this as a completely separate industry of technology. You're talking about the possibility of creating completely new advanced machinery, advanced testing machines, all kinds of different products that would stimulate our economy in a significant enough way to matter. I look at all the lost opportunity, and I say, where, it's almost amazing to just be in something where you're literally like, okay, where's this going to be in 10 years? And I'm going to be in it, and that's the other thing too, is I've had enough experience as an entrepreneur to know, listen, this isn't going to be, we didn't get into this to pump and dump. We got into this to, do it the right way. 7 to 10 years is usually the amount of time that it takes to get this business to where we want it to be, to whether we actually say, okay, do we have a strong footprint in it, or is it time to potentially exit? But so we're in it. We have no plans of going anywhere. We're going to grow the company. We have a lot, I tell my partners all the time, one of the beautiful things about being in our 40s when we started this is that, we know a lot of people, and we have a lot of contacts with business. And it was relatively, I hate to say this, it was relatively easy to raise. We raised, close to $14 or $15 million all told in both equity and financing. And, it was relatively easy. But the problem is that we all had to step away to a certain degree from our other careers and jump all in. And all of us are all in now. And, things have changed since that happened. Now we're all kind of getting in our lanes, and everybody is functioning like a company rather than, 6 guys who had a great idea and enough money to start it. So, those types of changes can be cathartic at times, because some of us are friends with each other, and I see myself not talking to my friends that much, not because we have problems, but because, we're working together now, and, socially you just don't want to go out with the same guy who you're dealing with on a regular basis every day about trying to get a company off the ground. So,
my feelings used to get hurt over that. But then I realized that exact same thing. These people hear me all day long. They don't want to hear me later on.
Yeah, well, that's true. It's totally true. And my feelings have been hurt at times because a couple of the guys in it, one particular is a very close friend of mine. And, he and I really used to play golf together. First of all, we don't play golf anymore at all, but we don't really have our times together. And, but I will say this, that, part of entrepreneurship, and I know we're going to touch on some of that stuff, is that this particular venture was one that I had the most confidence in I've ever done for one reason and one reason only, is that, the partners that you choose, sometimes they're not the right people for one reason, is that they don't have the same will. They don't have the same fail.
Right. You're right.
I will not, the ability to pivot, the ability to take care of a problem. And when you say I've got it covered, you don't have to worry about it, that guy's got it covered. And my partners are incredible. I can't say enough about them. They are salt of the earth guys who have an immense amount of success in other industries. And they literally dropped everything. And now they're submerged in this. And they are just the type of guys who you never have to worry are going to get done what they say they're going to get done. And that in and of itself, that could probably turn even that could turn a halfway good idea into something big. And we have what I believe to be much more than a halfway good idea.
Did everybody have a previous background of your 6 partners?
I'm going to be honest with you. 3 of the 6 did, and 3 of the 6 had really no opinion one way or the other. And to be honest with you, those are the 3 guys who had no previous experience, Chip. They're more over the top about their passion for it now than probably the other 3. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. They're new to it. It's all new and exciting. It's such an exciting plant and business.
Correct.
There's so many opportunities in it. And, you mentioned this at the beginning that this is all just starting. It's all just fresh. And so many people think the cannabis industry is over, but man, it's not. And you don't have to have $12 million. I know people in Michigan that have started on $12,000.
Sure.
$20,000 and are going to do good. But this was a great, I'm not going to call it a corporate strategy, even though that's exactly what it is. It just that, often has such bad connotations, but a really great strategy to come into the market strong with a multi-year game plan, not just to get rich quick. If you think you're going to get rich quick in the weed industry, it's just not going to happen. My buddy Stacy Johnson over there at Harvest House in Colorado. I don't know if you're ever up in Colorado. You should really go check his place out, Crested Butte, and in Crested Butte, and in Netherland, Harvest House. It's all boutique quality cannabis, but he's got a great phrase that's getting rich quick since 1989.
Well, if he started in 1989, then it's a sort of an oxymoron, because he's not getting rich quick, but he probably has made a couple of shekels. It's funny, I made this statement not so long ago to, I don't remember who, but it might have been on a podcast or might have been to one of our investors. And I said, we aim to be the largest craft grow company in the United States, because we want to maintain that same boutique type of mentality and the boutique approach to the quality. But we also recognize that, in order to grow, you have to expand. So, rather than have 100,000, 200,000 square foot grow and just make what we deem to be Walmart weed, and I hate to call it weed, but you know what I'm saying? It doesn't sound great calling it Walmart cannabis.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a good term for it.
So we want to create a craft boutique environment. And frankly, we want our consumer brand to be a lifestyle brand. We want to try, and branding is so difficult because of the fact that you're so limited on your commercialization of it. You can't do it outside your state. There's no national brands now. So, trying to put your footprint in the ground, in your state is hard enough. And then when you start to say, okay, once the floodgates are open and this is allowed for interstate commerce, because that looks like it might be happening out west. I don't know if you've been reading, but
I've got some great friends involved with that. Justin Jones over there, he's involved with it in Oregon, and we'll see what happens there first.
Yeah. So, one way or another, I was telling my partners the other day, I said, we applied for our recreational craft grow license in Illinois, which is an incredibly difficult license to obtain. We're actually going to find out today. And I told my partners, I said,
14 of those so far.
Oh yeah. That's the other thing. You got to deal with losing, failing the test, and it's tough for me because I'm somewhat of an academic, and I've taken a lot of tests in my life, and and as a trial attorney in my background, I don't like to fail. When you do all the things you can do, and it's costly, man. I'll tell you, it's the barriers to entry are incredible. I mean, you can spend 100, 200, 300. I've got friends who spend $400,000 on their craft grow license in Illinois.
Oh yeah.
And so you look at a guy who says, "Hey, man, I've got $6,000 for the filing fee." Or $2,500, I guess, for the social equity it was this time. I've got $2,500 for my license application, but who's going to do it? How am I going to do it? Where am I going to get the information? Where are the SOPs coming from? And you've got months and months of work with 20 people, and just to compete. So but I told my partners, I said, if the Interstate Commerce Act flies up in in Oregon and California, then I wonder if we can take a boat from Chicago's Navy Pier across the lake in Michigan so that we can transport, product back and forth, because we're not contiguous with Michigan. That's the funny thing about Illinois, is that you got to go through Indiana to get to Michigan. And Indiana hell will freeze over before Indiana becomes legal.
That's what they've said about Georgia, but I'm applying for a license down there right now.
That's a good point, Chip. That's a good point.
And Oklahoma used to be the worst place in the country to get caught, and now, Oklahoma's changing fast. They have got it's really kind of got a bad rap because of the way the country perceives it from the outside, but the inner workings of it, and it has all the makings for a progressive state, man. That's
really cool.
The social stuff that goes on here, the multiple ethnicities that are here. I mean, the LGBT community here, it's just, you would not expect all of that.
Well, you got a lot of big college towns too. I mean, people fail to realize that. And those college towns really do help. I mean, as far as I think that's a big factor. I mean, you guys got two major universities out there with a couple tens of thousands of students, and those are, and then all the other universities in the various cities, and that really helps. I mean, I thought Oklahoma was underrated in the sense of where it might be someday. And as I understand it, I mean, isn't it like most of the people who have, everybody says, oh, Oklahoma's saturated with growers and blah, blah, blah. But aren't those a lot of small growers? It's not, you guys don't have thousands of, huge, 50,000 square foot grow facilities. Am I correct in that?
You mentioned we call it the backpack laws, right? That they used to have in Michigan or California, where almost anybody could have a small grow with just a little bit of investment or a letter from their doctor. Kind of the same things going on here in Oklahoma, but they just took the veil off, right? Instead of saying, okay, it can be medical marijuana and we're not going to regulate the growing and the selling of it, as most states have they introduce it, right? They just jump right in, and that allowed. It's the exact same mechanism that happened in Michigan, Colorado, and California. It just started a little differently, and a bunch of out-of-state people have come here. I mean, I'm from out-of-state. You can still invest here being out-of-state. The number of people applying for licenses has slowed down, but man, they're going to have recreational cannabis here. Texas is right next door with 8 million people. I mean, this is really a great, great, great place to be for cannabis business.
Don't you guys have something like 1,500 dispensaries already? Is that true?
Man, I think it's even more than that. In the cities, the interesting thing about it here is in Tulsa, Norman, and Oklahoma City, there's building and planning departments. So, and that's also where the concentration of the dispensaries are.
Gotcha.
So you see a lot of them that have signs, but they haven't been opened up because the city has just been so inundated with building and zoning issues.
And how are they taxing it?
Taxation's great here. It's just taxed at the retail sale.
And how high is that?
I think it's 15%.
That's great. Yeah, I think Michigan, we're about 16%. Which then, you look at Illinois, and Illinois is Illinois is one of the first states, if not the only, still that passed legalization by legislation rather than referendum. So it was great because the law's already written. They're going to have 500 maximum dispensaries. They're going to have X amount of grows. They've done the calculation. So, in Illinois, you're not going to have to be vertically integrated to survive, whereas many other states, you always want that, you always want your grow with a processing facility and 5, 6, maybe 10 dispensaries. In Illinois, you're not really going to need that because there's going to be a need for you no matter what, because they've already calculated it, and there's only so many licenses that are going to be awarded. But, on the flip side of that is the fact that, like I said, the barriers to entry are ridiculous. The application process was ridiculous. And, they came out with their dispensary awards last week that were supposed to come out in June, but because of the coronavirus, it got delayed. There's lawsuits alleging that, the applications were not read fairly. There was supposed to be a social equity component to it. So you got a lot of points for social equity. So almost everybody had social equity. And then they had an additional 5 points for adding a veteran. Well, what some companies did was went out and got a veteran. And here's the caveat. They had to be 51% owners of the company. So it turns out there were over 4,000 applications for dispensaries in Illinois, over 4,000 applications for 75 licenses. But you could apply an unlimited amount of licenses, one entity, if you had the money. So 26 license applications, or applicants, I should say, tied for first place. But they covered all 75 licenses because they applied for multiple licenses. It turns out that there were a bunch of other people who didn't have a veteran who also got a perfect score. So they sued because they basically said the spirit of this application process was for social equity. It wasn't for veterans. It just got tagged on at the end. And someone figured out, well, if I have a social equity who is a veteran, I'm going to get all 55 points. And so they filed the lawsuit in federal court. I'm sorry, I think it's actually in state court, and it filed an injunction. The state is holding off the lottery because they're basically going to take the 26 ties, put them into a hat, and all those 26 entities are going to get all 75 licenses. So point being, though, is, people look at it and say, it's like playing lottery in Illinois, because if you get this grow, people are talking about the grow license, which is a craft grow, 15,000 square foot under canopy maximum. And they're saying those licenses alone are worth $10 million. So,
God, my God, I got a 10,000 square foot California one that I feel like I have $10 million in it. But
that's funny.
Oh, it did not really, but I got to make the best of it.
Thanks again for joining me with another fine episode of the Real Dirt Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear others, please download and subscribe the Real Dirt Podcast on iTunes or Spotify. Please, 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 please subscribe. Check us out on Instagram and comment on some of our posts so we can move forward there. And hey, man, thanks for lending me your time. I really appreciate it. Have an incredible rest of your day. This has been The Real Dirt.